morning and welcome to Utah Matters. I'm Dean Painter. We get around the state occasionally to talk to different folks around the state. Usually it's about politics or the economy or recreation. Well, we're in St. George this morning and we're talking about and in a community that is very diverse. It has a college, thriving college, vibrant college community. Of course, this is a place for retirement, for snowbirds, and it's a thriving family community as well. And when you have all of that combination, you have people who sometimes need counseling, certainly family counseling. It's our excuse to talk to Jonathan Decker today. Jonathan is our guest. He's a licensed marriage and family therapist and does things in an unusual way, and we'll talk about that during the course of this, our discussion today. One of the things he does is he writes commercials to supplement what he talks about, like this one.
So that's it. It's the most heart-wrenching experience of my life. Thanks for listening to me. I've never really trusted anybody with that story before.
What?
Trouble finding the right one? Classes offered through healthyrelationshipsutah.org.
Dave, if you don't mind just ordering a side. Things are a little tight right now.
Oh, okay. I guess I'll just have a side salad, and I'm good with water.
Very good. And for you, sir, a gourmet bacon cheeseburger, chili cheese fries, and a large drink.
You're just gonna shake while you're at it.
A chocolate shake.
Do you want 2 straws with that?
Why?
Avoid falling for a jerk or jerkette. Learn how. Register for a free class near you at healthyrelationshipsutah.org.
Jonathan, what a jerk and a jerkette. Who are those guys?
Okay, so that actually, I wrote that, but that was produced by my friends at Telekinesis Entertainment, and it was for Utah State University. But that was for a class that I taught for 3 years here in the community called How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk or a Jerkette, which was created by Dr. John Van Epp. It's taught across the country. It's taught throughout Utah right now. But it's a singles guidance course to help people stop stepping in the same dang bear trap of abusive or controlling or neglectful relationships and to get into healthy ones.
We assume that there was a special need for that here?
In St. George or just in the...
In general.
In general, oh yeah. It's an epidemic. And people are searching everywhere for guidance as far as dating is concerned. You know, it used to be Jack and Susie sitting in a tree. Hey, Dean, come on.
K-I-S-S-I-N-G, right?
First comes
love.
Then comes
marriage.
Then comes
a little one in a baby carriage.
Baby in a baby carriage.
Yeah.
Love, marriage, baby. But that's not necessarily the order of operations anymore. In fact, the entire code and rules for dating have changed to the point where it's almost a free-for-all. Just because people have different values, people have different expectations for dating. And so when they show up on the dating scene, you may be dating someone who has a completely different idea of what dating or relationships look like, and a lot of times it causes chaos. Add to that there's a whole smorgasbord of values and beliefs in our culture, so what this class does is it's a research-based class that talks about, okay, setting aside individual belief systems, value systems, what does the research say are healthy dating practices to avoid falling for a jerk or a jerkette?
Now, it's not mainly what you do, but I want to stick with this topic for just a minute.
Sure.
You've taught this many, many times. What surprises you, the feedback you get from the people that are there? And by the way, what surprises you about what people are there?
I was surprised. So here in St. George, we have Dixie State, or who knows what it is now, right? But,
right.
But we have a college community, but almost exclusively in my classes, I met a lot of middle-aged singles. People who had been through divorces, and I guess, I don't know if humbled is the right word, but the college students tend to think, I'm going to have my fairy tale wedding, I'm going to have my fairy tale marriage, and everything's going to be wonderful. And the middle-aged people are more like, okay, I'm tired of getting put through the ringer. I could use some guidance.
Let's get her done.
Yeah, and so I saw a lot of people, and then they saw me, and they thought, was this the Doogie Howser of therapy? And he's got this baby face, and so I had to counter ageism a little bit. But most people were very open-minded and willing to listen, and feedback was tremendous. I know we had several weddings came out of the class.
Came out of the class.
Yeah.
What was the key point of anxiety from these folks? What did they always tend to come back with about their experience?
Well, there's kind of this feeling that all the good ones are taken.
Yeah.
You know, which isn't true, but it certainly seems that way because people get stuck into they keep stepping in the same trap. And they don't know how or they don't know why, because they're trying to be decent people and they're trying to find nice people, and a lot of times they find these wolves in sheep's clothing. And so a big part of this class is helping people to detect the actual sheep from the wolves in sheep's clothing and see who really is harmless. And so
they really do a great job in these commercials. You mentioned that you watch these commercials, your own commercials. Tell a story about watching them in the theater.
Well, so yeah, these if any of you went to the Megaplex theaters, they aired the commercials for this class in the Megaplex theaters, and I was sitting there just about to enjoy my movie, and this commercial starts, and this person sitting next to me and is chuckling derisively.
And by the way, we should say that you're in the commercial at the end.
I'm in the commercial. Yeah, I'm in it. I'm in the commercial teaching the class. And I wrote the commercial, and this person, not knowing any of that, just sitting right next to me and says something to the effect of, "This is ridiculous." Said, "Who would need?" And they look at me and they said, "Seriously, who would go to a class for something like that?" And then they watch a little while more. I'm not making this up. They watch a little while more and they go, "Well, that would never happen," like the scenario in the commercial. And I couldn't help myself. I was fighting the urge to not say it, but I went ahead and said it, and I said, "You know, actually, that was me, and I wrote that commercial." And they looked at me, and they couldn't tell if I was just messing with them or if I was being serious. And they said, "Well, I still think it's ridiculous." And went back to watching the movie.
And then his girlfriend comes over and sits by him and says something really rude to him.
Something really rude, yeah. It says, "Give me your money."
Yeah. Let's talk about where you've been. Mm-hmm. You are the sort of the soft, sweet, young-faced guy. How are you talking to families about what it means to be a family? I guess I'm saying, give us your experience.
That's a good question, Dean. Actually, do you mind if I backpedal really fast since we're transitioning?
Please.
Anyone who saw that commercial and is interested in taking the class, healthyrelationshipsutah.com and .org.
And that's through USU, is it?
That's through Utah State University's extension offices throughout the state. I taught the class for 3 years. I taught it something like 40 times. I never got tired of it. The material's great. It was time for me to move on and focus on other things, but they're still giving it throughout the state. So that's where you'd want to go. And or they can just read the book by the same name, How to Avoid Falling in Love with a Jerk.
By the way, I'm just curious, does anyone bring that jerk with them to this class? To try to dissuade them from being a jerk?
Yeah, usually the jerks don't stay. Or I have people come up to me after the class and say, "Well, you were going through the criteria, and I realized that I'm the jerk." And that I have some things I need to change. Really, the jerk angle is just a hook to get them in. It's really, it's not about labeling people. It's really about...
Well, yeah, I know what you mean by that, but...
yeah. It's about, and we talk about how do you tell the wolves from the wolves in sheep's clothing, and a big part of it is time. The class goes into incredible detail about it, but the biggest take-home message, people want connection, they want intimacy, physical intimacy, people do, we're built that way, and they want commitment. Now some people don't, but the people who get duped are people who want love. They want to share their life with somebody. And so because they want touch and they want commitment, they kind of rush into that aspect of things, when really that should be put on the back burner, and they should be taking time to really get to know this person, to see if this person is trustworthy, if they can rely on them, to see if who they think this person is matches up with who they really are. And that can only come with time, because people who are deceivers can keep up the charade for a long time. But if you watch them in a variety of circumstances and watch how they treat other people, I've had people who said, "I was dating a guy and he treated other people like garbage. He lied, he deceived, he was belittling, but he was so sweet to me." And I said, "Wasn't that a red flag that was going to come back on you?" And they said, "No, it just made me feel special. Like I was bringing out the best in him," and I just, face palm. And so, anyway.
Someone suggests that this is a argument for living together before marriage, not making a big commitment until you figure out if you do live with a jerk, or what
Yeah.
issues that your mate might have.
Is there a question in there?
Is it?
Is cohabitation a good proving ground for marriage?
There you go.
You know, rationally, it would seem like it would be. It would seem like, let's do a test drive before we move on to the next step, but that's not what the research supports. And Dr. Van Epp goes on at length about this in the book, about what the research actually says, but that people who live together before marriage are more likely to end up divorcing if they get married. And he goes into a lot of reasons for why that might be. And of course, there are exceptions to the rule. There are people who live together and get married and they're perfectly happy. But speaking in terms of statistics and general trends, that's not the case. And we could go on for a long time about why
Sure,
that is, but
sure.
that's what the class and the book are for.
Sure, got you.
So how does this baby face talk to families?
So look on the bottom of the screen where you can get that. You can go to that class.
Yeah.
Good job. Let's move on to what your real specialty is couples and parenting. Trends. What are you seeing happening to families? You've been doing this for several years. What's going on?
Well, a lot of trends, a lot of the work I do is with blended families, step families. I myself am a part of 2 step families through both death and divorce, various parts of my family.
You have a stepchild?
I have a stepchild and a great kid, and his dad's a great father, you know, and so part of that successful step family is when I came on the scene, immediately I wanted to support that father-son relationship and not try and wedge myself in between. And because of that, my stepson's father and I, we get along really, really well.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we don't go bowling together or anything, but we're it's just fine. But a lot of step families have difficulty making that transition. People, especially parents, feel very competitive about their children's affections, and I see a lot, unfortunately, of these poor kids get caught in the crosshairs of these parents who are fighting as if they had never divorced, and then pulling their new partners into it, and then, you know, it's a kind of a tug of war with these kids. And so that's one trend, and one of the things that I do a lot of work with is helping these blended families learn how to get along. And hopefully the one thing that all the adults have in common is they love these kids, and they want what's best for these kids. And that's where I usually go first, is let's clear away all of the debris from the past relationships and whatever resentments there still are. Learn how to let go and move on so you can collectively do what's best for this kid.
But if you've been in a very combative relationship with someone that you're divorcing, that word competitive tends to emerge, I would imagine.
Yeah.
I'm going to guess that that's probably one of the biggest issues why there's so much anxiety with step families, is because mom and dad, whichever, the step parent, the real the bio parent, they're competing, you know, on their half of the week, if that's the way it is.
Yeah.
What do you do? What do you say? What are you telling them?
You know, I wish I could give a shoot from the hip, Fraser Crane on the radio, Dr. Phil, whatever advice, but the truth is that every family is different. And there are some universal bits of wisdom when it comes to blended families, but a lot of times it is case by case. But I guess one thing that comes to mind is always bring it back to what is best for the child. And I always counsel people, you know, your child is not your therapist. If you have an axe to grind against your ex, your child is not the person to bring that to. You don't complain to a child about their parent. You don't badmouth their parent to them, because this is their father, this is their mother, this is, you know, to you they may be a nasty ex, but to this kid this is their world. And to be very supportive of that relationship, and if you have issue with your ex, you take that to your own counselor, you take that to a trusted friend or things like that. So that's a place to start.
What do you tell a woman, for example, who's the stepmother, who stepped in and now has the kids half the week with her husband? What do you tell them about how they should try to identify themselves with the children? Should they try to be the mom A or mom B, or you know, more than a stepmom? Should she try to be everything that bio mom is?
You know, am I messing with my mic? Okay, I'm good. You know what's interesting about that? It depends on what the kid wants. So, for example, when I married my wife and my stepson was 3, we knew we were going to have a daughter, and that daughter was going to call me Dad.
Yeah.
and that our other kids were going to call me Dad. And so I said to him, I said, you know, I know how close you are to your father, and I'm not looking to take your father's place, but do you want to call me Dad? Do you want to keep calling me Jono, which is my name's Jonathan, but Jono's the nickname. And he said something very sweet. He says, I want my dad to be my dad and my Jono to be my Jono. Mm. And you know, I'm very much a parent. I feel a parental role, but his father is his father. And it's different from family to family, you know. And I would always ask the kids and follow the kids' lead. You get into trouble when people are imposing on the kids what it should be. No, I am your mom. You will call me mom, or you will address me as dad, or I'm not your father. You call me stepdad. You know, these types of things. Kids are going through a hard enough time with this as it is, and to let them feel like they have a say in what they want these relationships to be helps to ease that transition for a lot of them. So there are some kids who want to call for example, their stepfather, they want to call him dad. Others don't. So there's my shoot from the hip.
Yeah.
Wisdom is let the kid decide.
Let's move off directly into divorce. I hear a lot of this lately, that couples, young people, are less likely to really give it a go, that not only are they getting married less, but when they do get married, they are much less likely than their parents to try to make little things, try to work out little differences, little problems. Mm-hmm. They're much more likely to divorce easily. What do you get? What kind of feel do you get from people in that way?
You know, as with any type of societal change, it's part progress and part dark underbelly. Mm. You know, the progress is back in the day when it was exceptionally hard to get a divorce. You'd have people stuck in these abusive relationships with really no way out and very little support and very little freedom. And so I think there is good that comes from a bit more wiggle room to leave when divorce is the best choice. You know, I've heard it said you can be pro-marriage without being anti-divorce. Mm. And I fall into that camp. There is sometimes that divorce is what needs to happen. Now, the dark underbelly of that, it's easier to divorce, it's like you're saying, is a lot of people, I think, give up too quickly. I think if it's not idyllic, but even then, most people don't expect their marriage to be idyllic. Everyone knows going in, well, we're going to have hardships and we're going to have arguments, but we'll work it out. But then you actually get in the trenches, and it's harder than you realize.
Do most people going into marriage that you deal with believe that they were going to be married to this person till the end of their lives?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And depending on their beliefs, you know, even beyond. But yeah, no one gets married to get divorced, at least not that I've ever met. And so do I see people who... So my bias, whenever a couple comes to me, is to say my bias is always to start with trying to not just save the marriage, but make it flourish. And the metaphor that I use is, or the simile, I guess, is a marriage is like a garden. That you have weeds that need to be cleared out in order for the fruit to grow. You also have a lot of crap that actually is for your good and for the good of the marriage. You just don't sense it at the time.
Yeah.
And then there's the sunshine and the water. And so my bias is to always treat it like a garden, that we're not just going to help it eke by. We want this thing to thrive. But if we realize collectively, and it's never my decision. I never say, you guys should just get a divorce.
Yeah.
But if they say to me, this is the direction we want to take it, then we transition into peaceful mediation. You know? We've
gone way too long on this break. I want a closing question for this break. You work in a community that has a very high retirement population. Do you work with more senior couples who, for whatever reason, and maybe it's that the kids have gone and I've rediscovered myself, and I just want to be a little bit me. I'm putting words in your mouth in your counseling, but do you talk to a lot of senior couples who are having trouble?
I talk to senior couples who are having trouble, but what you just described is more what I see in the movies. Usually, the senior couples, they've lost a spouse to death and they've remarried.
Yeah.
Or sometimes there's empty nest syndrome going on. But very, very very seldom do I see someone who says, now that the kids are gone, I just want to start over.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right. Well, you mentioned the movies, and you do specialize in a couple of things that make your counseling unique. We want to talk about those when we come back. We're with Jonathan Decker, a marriage and family therapist in St. George. We'll be right back on Utah Matters. Welcome back to Utah Matters. We're with marriage and family therapist Jonathan Decker here in St. George. You do something very unique. In fact, you've sort of broken ground with some others here in Utah. Is sort of an homage to the world that we live in, the very technical world we live in. Tell us about Online Center for Couples and Families.
Well, we have a virtual therapy clinic. Just like instead of going to the store you shop on Amazon, we do therapy online. It's like Skype, except for it's through a platform called eTherapy. And basically, you can find a therapist who meets your needs, even if they're not in the same city, and meet with them from the comfort of your own home, instead of driving across town.
HIPAA protected, I assume it has to be.
Yeah, it's firewall, and it's HIPAA compliant, firewall protected. Yeah, absolutely. So,
I'm just curious. What's your view? Where would you rather be, in front of a little camera or in the office?
Well, honestly, it's sixes for me. I enjoy them both. There are pros and cons. I mean, you could say that we're not in the same geographic space, and there's something about the immediacy of having someone in the room with you. But on the flip side, if you're doing an online session, so you're in my office for therapy, I'm not going to be this close to your face. True. It would be awkward like this is.
Yes.
but
that was awkward.
I know, I'm sorry. But when you're doing a webcam, you're very close to each other's faces, reading each other's expressions. It's very intimate, but there's the safety of you're not quite in the same space. Mm-hmm. I actually once had a couple that after I was talking to them for a few minutes, I said, hold on. Where am I? Am I in bed with you guys?
No, and they're in their bedroom.
And they had taken their laptop in. They were sitting on their bed, and I said, "I don't. This may be a little more than I'm willing to take."
Wow.
But
how successful has it been? Does it work?
It definitely works.
Yeah.
Yeah. We just started. We just launched the clinic in October. Yeah, we launched it in October, and so we've seen success so far already. People really connect with it, especially if they're in a rural area, or if there's some place where they are more comfortable in their own home, or they don't want to drive, save money on gas, save money on babysitter. There's a lot of reasons why people would take it up, but yeah, that's netfamilytherapy.com.
Netfamilytherapy.com, right there on the bottom of your screen.
Yeah, so we treat all throughout the state of Utah.
Of course, there are those that will say, like everything else that goes along with the technology, that we're losing that intimacy, even if it's close.
Yeah.
We don't write letters anymore, and now we don't even talk about our deepest and darkest issues. We have to talk to a screen. What do you say?
I mentioned the double-edged sword before, or the pro and the con. I mean, the pro of all this social media and all this technology is I keep in touch with people that I know a generation ago would have been lost to me for forever. High school friends, elementary school friends, all sorts of things like that. We stay very much connected in each other's lives. Yeah. The flip side is, how much do you really connect through a text? Mm. And so I think we have to strive to find a balance. I think social media is a tool that can be very useful as long as it doesn't become a crutch.
Gotcha. Now, one of the things that you do a lot of is are you involved in media, especially movies? Mm-hmm. You write movie reviews, you've written a book on it, but you use those movies and some of the elements within them to teach and help in your therapy.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
Well, big movie buff. It's in my DNA, and so I had to merge the two. And I will often recommend a movie to a couple or to a family or to individuals to help them with something specific they're going through. Watch this. Come see me next time, and let's talk about what this meant to you and how you can apply it in your life.
Give me an example of that.
I was going to do another one, but I'm actually thinking of Rocky Balboa. So this is 10 years ago.
This is Rocky 6?
Yeah, Rocky 6.
Okay.
They called it Rocky Balboa to give it a bit more class, but he's mourning the death of his wife, and he's kind of estranged from his son. They haven't fought. They still love each other, but they've kind of grown apart. And this movie helped me through my own mother's passing, actually, and helped my father and I to deal with that. And so I recommend that to people a lot.
Can we watch a little bit of that?
Yeah,
the moment. I guess it's the little chat he has with son, isn't it?
With his son, yeah.
Yeah, let's take a look.
Let me tell you something you already know. The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It's a very mean and nasty place, and I don't care how tough you are, it will beat you to your knees and keep you there permanently if you let it. You, me, or nobody is gonna hit as hard as life. But it ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. Now, if you know what you're worth, now go out and get what you're worth. But you gotta be willing to take the hits and not pointing fingers saying you ain't where you wanna be because of him or her or anybody. Cowards do that, and that ain't you. You're better than that. I'm always gonna love you no matter what. No matter what happens. You're my son, you're my blood. You're the best thing in my life. But until you start believing in yourself, you ain't gonna have a life. Don't forget to visit your mother.
One of the great speeches of all time in the movies, and certainly for a father and a son. How do we get more about what you do with that?
My website, yourfamilyexpert.com. I do relationship tips, and then I do parent movie reviews. So when I see movies, I discuss what the themes are that parents can talk about with their kids.
Awesome. Jonathan, in closing, as we go, if there is a magic bullet, and I don't think there is, what's one thing from all your experience in counseling marriage and families and couples and blended families that would you say would be most helpful to people or to be aware of?
I think, honestly, the families that I see, the couples that I see are affection starved. And so even though we need to be accountable and we need to watch for our criticism and not be so negative and all this, what covers a multitude of mistakes in a family or a marriage is being genuinely affectionate and trustworthy.
You're not necessarily talking about physically affectionate.
Not necessarily, but if your partner or your child feels openly that you love them and that they can trust you, you know, and that you've proven that you're trustworthy, that is rock solid for helping with anything else, making up for anything else. So,
Jonathan Decker is a marriage family therapist in St. George. Jonathan, thank you so much for being with us, and thanks for all your great work.
Thank you.
Thank you for joining us on Utah Matters. We will see you next week.